All right, transfer portal. Garrett, you found this one. Over 1,000 players have entered the transfer portal within the first 24 hours of it being open. We've mentioned a lot of them. We've seen a lot of them. 24 hours, 1,000 players have entered the portal. Some of them did it even, of course, well before.
Only about 40% of those players, based on the averages of the last couple of years, will find new homes.
Yes, and some of them will be like that one across the campus from somebody, I forgot who it was, who was watching his former team practice while he was still waiting for something of an offer. Now, this might have been updated since then. Most players to enter the transfer portal via per school. Now, this was as late last night, and this might have, again, each team might have added 1, 2, 5, I don't know. Virginia Tech, A&M, well, that's not a surprise. Clemson, Ole Miss, and Washington State.
I don't know how day this is because, shoot, based on the way social media is going, Oklahoma State should be somewhere on that list with all their departures. I mean, they're getting, left and right guys leaving. Dominic Richardson's joining Spencer Sanders. There's like 10 other guys. It's weird what's going on in Stillwater right now with the mass exodus that's going on. So I'm surprised that they're not on that list, but I didn't even catch the whole thing.
Yeah, go put that back up the second one again.
Okay.
Yeah. And A&M might end up with 15 before it's all said and done.
A&M had a bunch as the season was winding down.
Jalen Jones, by the way, A&M defensive back, who's a hell of a player, is turning pro. He's gonna turn pro, so he's leaving A&M. So that doesn't count there, but that's also another hit.
Yeah, so I'd be curious to know, how many Oklahoma State has. I swear they got to have close to 9 or 10 at this point.
Okay.
Maybe it's just a shade under. But yeah, that's an interesting graphic, and the point about the 1,000 people have entered the portal. Enter at your own risk, man. I know some already kind of know the deal on the other end. They've already gotten the DMs from that recruiting coach at the other school that they're going to go to, or whoever it is that sends, the message that, hey, we got $1 million here for you, or whatever it, is going to be for every particular case. That's all going on. We know it. It's free agent market basically for everybody. Everybody's signing 1-year deals basically at this point. And, then you got to re-recruit them and do all of that. And I do think that at the end of the day, this is a blessing in some ways, as calamitous as it is, that you do finally have guys sort of settle in where they're supposed to be, because there's a quarterback like a Kyron Drones who enters the portal, and, from a Baylor fan perspective, like, oh, God, we're losing Kyron Drones and blah, blah, blah. And then he gets out in the market, and, you would have thought that Jacob Zeno was going to land at Clemson when he entered the portal. He ended up at UAB. No disrespect to the Blazers. It's a good program, but it's not what some people were touting him to be. And Kyron Drones, I think, is probably going to be similar to that. I don't think he's ending up at Notre Dame or, some massive step up. I think he's probably going to be like Texas State or, something like maybe a little bit higher than that. But
I do think it'll be an FCS or it'll be an FBS team. I think it'll be a Power 5 or a Group of 5 team.
Yeah, it very well could be, but I'm just saying, it's not automatically you jump in and you're jumping up a level. And I think, for the most part, that's what it is. So not surprised to see a lot of guys. I know, Bud Elliott at 247 had brought up this point, and I've seen others along the way bring up this point as well, is with the COVID year, this is going to be a busier year than normal. And so I think we're seeing that play out with as many names as there are.
Okay, we have 2 or 3 other little nuggets before we get to the Online 3 sports business reporter on, in fact, transfer portal.
I would say that the most important thing, though, of the number, Oklahoma State's losing starters. They're losing their starting quarterback, their starting running back, starting defensive end, their leading tackler,
Oh, yeah.
So, they've lost starters. A&M's lost not necessarily a bunch of starters per se, but they've lost a bunch of their really high-level recruits in the last 2 years who you would have thought would have been starters maybe going into 2023. Virginia Tech, they have 11, and Washington State has 9. On that spectrum of those 20 guys, I would bet you only about between the two schools, 4 or 5 are starters, and the rest are just people because those are new coaching staffs a year in in either place, and that's kind of how the herd culls. Clemson lost DJU, but, we'll see who else
They lost 9, and then all of a sudden people get unhappy. They go to a place, it's not what they think, or in some cases you wonder how many of them just know the future, that they aren't going to play much longer and productivity is not there. West Virginia. We have I just talked to our guest. We can move him back about 3 to 4 minutes. JT Daniels started at USC, transferred to Georgia, went to West Virginia, and is in the transfer portal yet again.
I said when this happened back in the springtime that I you saw West Virginia fans going ape over this and acting like they were going to win the Big 12. And I don't want to paint with a super broad brush, but there were certainly some who were acting that way. And I even remember there was a couple of comments. I don't know if you guys do or not. Like, why aren't y'all more, crazy over the JT Daniels thing? It's like, well, just, he's already been at 2 schools and he's a talented player and all that, but it's just, I don't know. It's not like landing him like a pure 5-star out of high school. But then, he started playing and I actually thought he was pretty okay, pretty good even in some situations. And then as the season went, that faded tremendously to the point where Garrett Green was your starter by the end. And yeah, I mean, the writing was on the wall with this one. I do think he's a poster child for, the portal maybe being a little bit too open. I mean, if you're going to now be at another school, at what point does it end? I guess when you run out of eligibility. But not surprised after the way the season ended. But I do think this is one of those where, maybe he needs to go down a level or something. I don't know, but all that movement's a little bit much for one guy.
All right, now there's a picture. Garrett, I didn't ask you about the one from Michigan, the kid from Arizona State. Do we have that one? Ladarius Henderson, who yesterday entered the transfer portal, today has committed to Michigan. And in fact, on his Twitter feed, it shows him with Jim Harbaugh and Michigan coaches on the University of Michigan campus, I believe so, with him committing to Michigan the very next day. Last thing, Jalen Hyatt. This is what